Alright guys, in today's video we have a very interesting rumor to go over and discuss here regarding the PlayStation 5. I think you guys are going to be pretty interested in this one. Now I don't want to sit here and say that this is confirmation of anything because it's not. However, it does pose an interesting question, and that question is Sony preparing to launch both a base model PS5 and a PS5 Pro model at the same time? Now, this is something we have discussed before, although it was, I believe, a couple months ago. It comes from a Japanese journalist who had briefly mentioned this, who definitely has contacts on the inside, and they briefly mentioned that they had heard from other sources within the industry that Sony was preparing to do two models at the launch, and that was really the only time we ever heard of this. However, we have something else that has popped up here from I don't want to say a credible insider, but a verified insider or industry professional from NeoGAF. We have mentioned them once before here on the channel. And yeah, it has to do with this exact same topic, and the timing of it is very interesting. So we're going to go over this briefly, and if you could, leave the video a like if you think you're going to enjoy it, or if you enjoy the content in general, or if you are just waiting for Sony to say something about the PS5 like I am. It really helps the videos out more than you know, and be sure to hit the subscribe button as well. But this comes from VFX veteran once again, who is vetted on NeoGAF, which means he actually does apparently have some sources. In order to get vetted, you have to go through the moderators, and obviously I don't know the exact process, nor do I know how legitimate this process is, but this is the process you have to go through nonetheless in order to get vetted on NeoGAF, and this individual has been vetted, and they've talked about the PS5 in the past as well, and this is what he says in his latest post, at least the one that I came across. Alright people, one last time. I heard that there are two consoles per company. The mid-gen refreshes are going to be introduced at release so that these consoles can run the entire 7-year cycle. The Xbox Series X that was released yesterday is the top-end one, 12 T-flops. There will be a base Xbox Series X that is slower than that one. Now that we kind of already know, or we've been hearing about, that I have to believe is the rumored Xbox Lockhart, which will be most likely known as the Xbox Series S. And there is actually a lot of credence, or at least a significant amount, that makes you believe this is in fact something Microsoft is planning on doing. There are some Xbox individuals who claim to have inside sources that are confirming to them that this thing is in fact real, and it will most likely be launching at the same time as the Xbox Series X. It goes on to say here, Sony is releasing two PlayStation models. The base PS5 is 9 T-flops. Their other one is also top of the line to compete with the Xbox Series X top dog. This all makes sense now as to why people are getting mixed numbers from each of the platforms. I also heard that the top of the line models will be expensive, no pricing, but I would guess around $600. Also, no dates on when the top models will come out for PS5. My guess is that they are going to release both models at the same time. This is all I know, and won't be fishing for any more info. Now, obviously, that is a lot to take in, but they are saying here, and this is possibly a way to cover themselves, they're not saying for sure that Sony is going to release both models at the same time. Basically, what he's saying, or what he's trying to confirm here based off of what he has heard and the information he has, is that both companies are in fact releasing two consoles. Now, we could see a situation where maybe Sony is like, look, we're going to release both at the same time. And it will be maybe the same situation that Microsoft is planning on doing. If I had to put my money on one of these companies actually going through with this, I think it's more than likely going to be Microsoft. It just makes a lot of sense. It just kind of follows the model that they already have going on right now, and it would make a lot of sense for them to continue that going into next generation. However, Sony does have that exact same model, but I just feel like Sony, out of the two companies, would be the one that's a little bit more hesitant to do this. However, that doesn't mean they wouldn't do it. But this would honestly explain a lot, regardless if both of these consoles, if they are in fact real, do end up releasing at the same time. I think that that's the part that's probably the most iffy here. Like, I just would have a hard time imagining both Sony and Microsoft releasing two separate consoles. It would make sense for them to do that. I just have a hard time visualizing that happening, but what does make the most sense here, what would explain a lot, and I think where maybe VFX Veteran is actually onto something here, is this would explain, at least on the PlayStation side of things. And I only say the PlayStation side of things because even though we've been hearing mixed numbers from Microsoft when it comes to 12 T-flops, but then we have a Lockhart console that's going to be apparently 4 T-flops of next-gen architecture around that. That is one of these situations where, it seems more likely that they're going to do that, but Sony has been so quiet, and everything surrounding Sony has been so quiet, that this would actually explain why you hear developers and insiders kind of ping-ponging back and forth, where one day it's 9.2 T-flops, and it's going to be the lesser powerful console, most likely at $400. But then you also hear from other industry people, across the industry itself, that is actually going to be 12, 13 T-flops, even some people claiming it's going to be 14 T-flops, which sounds insane to me, but this is what you've been hearing, and it's been nonstop, and it would explain, like, if Sony was actually developing multiple consoles, this would explain why there's so many different numbers floating around. But here's the thing, and this is the one area where I don't necessarily know if you should buy into this. We haven't really heard much about this. In fact, this is only the second time we are hearing about such a thing. I do want to mention to you, though, that I don't have it right here in front of me right now, but there was a time not too long ago, I think it was a couple months ago, where somebody over at Sony who was, had a hand in developing the PlayStation 4 Pro model, they actually came out and they literally said that, look, we did the PlayStation 4 Pro to test the two console model to see if it would be viable, to see if it's something that we could actually do, and if it could be something that is successful on the market. And he came out and said it was a success and that we will most likely, or he didn't say most likely, but he pretty much said we will be repeating that in the future. So, as crazy as it sounds, we essentially already had the Pro model of the PlayStation 5 confirmed at that moment in time, but the big question then becomes, when would Sony actually release this? You would imagine that they would follow the same path that they did with the PlayStation 4 Pro, but who knows? Plans change. Maybe this is why Sony's being so quiet. Maybe this is why we've been hearing so many different things back and forth when it comes to the power factor. But again, I don't want to get you guys too hyped up or excited or anything, and this is in no way, shape, or form damage control, because I don't know anything. I know as much as everybody else does at this point when it comes to what Sony's going to be offering with the PlayStation 5. But we do have to look at this, and we have to be rational about it, and we have to understand that the chances of Sony doing something like this are, I'd say, pretty low. Again, I'm not trying to be pessimistic. It's just, realistically speaking, I think it would be kind of a far cry to imagine Sony doing something like this. But, I feel like I'm also kind of in the middle because, here's another possibility. Now, maybe this is a little bit too far-fetched, but maybe, and this is just, out of left field speculation here, maybe there's a chance that Sony's original plan was to release the base model PS5 at $400, kind of following in the footsteps of the PlayStation 4, and they also had in early development a Pro model. Now, maybe at one point in time, this Pro model was going to be really, really high-end, and it was, targeting a release of maybe a year to maybe 3 years after the base model PS5, and because of that, that's why it was going to be so high-end. Maybe their plans changed at some point where they were maybe they caught wind of what Microsoft was doing. Maybe they caught wind of the idea that Microsoft planned on having two consoles at the launch, and Sony decided to change their plans, and they wanted to also have a high-end model available and ready to go at the launch of the PS5, holiday 2020, but they would have to scale back how powerful it would end up being, because if they're going to release it in 2020, it would have to be similar to what we're seeing with the Xbox Series X at this moment in time. There's no way they could target something higher than that without it being absolutely ridiculous price-wise. But as you see here, this individual, VFX Veteran, they are speculating that if this were to occur, that both of these models will end up being around $600. Again, this person is saying a lot, the thing I'm paying attention to here is that at the very end here, they say this is all I know, and I will not be fishing for any more info. Between that and between him saying that he's not sure of the date when it comes to the PS5 Pro model or the top-end model, And so with that in mind, it really makes you think like, this is the second time we're hearing about this from a source that, listen, if I had to be honest here, I think that Japanese journalist, that source, I don't have his name offhand right now, but he I think is pretty credible, and he wasn't saying anything definitively. He was just saying that this is what he has heard, is that Sony is in fact planning on doing 2 models. And again, we look at Sony pretty much confirming this themselves, and now we have a second person here saying that this is also what they've heard. But the big question remains if this is in fact real, which I think it is. Like, I think a Pro PS5 model is a real thing that we will see at some point. The big question is Sony going to launch this thing alongside the base model PS5, or will they wait? That is the question that remains unanswered. Maybe we will get answers to this very soon. We can hope. But at this point, I'm going to be really interested to see what you guys have to say. Do you believe this? Do you think that Sony actually does have 2 models of the PS5? And if they do, what are the chances that you think they're actually going to release both at launch? And more importantly, would you be happy about that? For me, it makes a lot of sense. Honestly, for both companies to want to do something like this, it's options, and I think it only helps. Not only will Sony and Microsoft both have a low-end offering, but a high-end offering as well. But the big question is, when it comes to the low end, how low is it really going to be? But if everything's on next-gen architecture, whether or not it's a low-end model or a high-end model or just a mid-tier model, that's really all that's going to matter most at the end of the day. So let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Leave the video a like if you did enjoy it. Subscribe to the channel if you're new and haven't already. Hit the bell notification icon so you never miss an upload, and feel free to share this video out on top of all that. But until next time, guys, take care.